Well, we got the CPI report yesterday, and well, it just wasn't that great. However, the markets seem to at least take it on the chin for right now, and I think that they stood up to it pretty well. We'll take a look at the S&P 500, the NASDAQ 100, and the Russell 2000 stocks tracked through their ETFs. And then also we'll take a look at Nvidia, give an update on that, and then Bitcoin and XRP as well. So we'll jump right into the charts on this one and just look and see what happened yesterday. Found the market open with the inflation report, and you can see we opened for SPY, tracking the S&P 500 right at the 50-day, closing up above the 20-day. That's bullish for us, and we're also closing up above this trend line from the rising wedge pattern, which can be bearish if we fall outside of it and if we hold outside of there. So as for right now, we still have the green lights. We're still up above all the moving averages that we'd be looking for in order to see bullishness be sustained over longer time periods for the S&P 500. We definitely don't want to see a repeat of what we saw. So we're still sort of in that consolidation pattern where the lows are coming up, the highs are coming down, and we just haven't had enough information to break out of it. We have PPI today at 8:30. You might be watching this after that PPI report, and we'll see what that has to tell us as well. And then what we saw, and even though TMF isn't necessarily part of this, for the long-term treasuries, the fact that really got impacted by that higher inflation, because it really pushes back the idea of Fed rate cuts, and it also means that the inflation eating into the value of the bonds themselves, of those longer dated treasuries. And so, well, it didn't really spell good things. Bond yields went up, which means bond prices went down. And so we saw that soften a little bit. So what we're looking for is this inflation going to be sustained, or is it going to be temporary? That's the big question to answer. And every report that we get like this from the inflation reports, the worse it is going to be for those longer term treasuries if it starts to tell a story that inflation really is. If it starts to bring in major fears of a second wave of inflation, which I don't think the market sees that yet, by the way. I think if the market did see that, then we wouldn't have had yesterday, even though it was a red day for SPY, I don't think we would have seen that recovery off the 50-day. I think instead we would have punched down through it and had a red candle instead of green. So for right now, it's like, well, that wasn't great, but it wasn't horrible. We'll watch and see what the other inflation reports have to say. So PPI, PCE towards the end of the month. We also need to watch for that action. That might be on February 28th itself. And it's not a leap year, so that should be the end of the month. It should be the last day of the month. And then, of course, that puts further pressures on what we see for labor market, but even more so the next CPI that comes around. Everyone that follows this, if it follows in suit with showing slightly higher numbers, especially higher than expected, the market's going to start to get really worried about that. So we should really be watching for those other inflation reports. I think they're becoming more and more of a catalyst all the time. So let's move over into the Qs. Still down below this trend line, but we did find support right at the 50-day, closed well above the 20-day. It's been pretty darn good for what we saw for the Qs. Still below that trend line. Need to get on top of it. For SPY, need to get on top of 609.83 to see a rampant upside from where we're at right now. It's this trend line that we're watching at the moment for the Qs. We'll see if we get up above that leading into the Nvidia earnings. For IWM, you can tell that we saw a bit of a rough day with the inflation report, that having the worst day so far. I said that high inflation, that Russell 2000 stocks would be punished the most, and they were the worst performer yesterday out of the NASDAQ 100, the S&P 500, and the Russell 2000. So it underperformed the other two, and we figured that would be indeed be the case, and that was the case. So now we're down below this trend line. We no longer have it as support, and the 50 and the 20-day, even though we might have that faster 20 crossing up over the 50, it might be a bit of a false signal if we can't get those prices back up over those moving averages. They're just not up there to really encourage us to think that this is a golden cross moment with the 20 and the 50. So for IWM, it becomes even more important over time. This is going to be the even more nervous, maybe sideways trading index that we see until the questions on inflation are answered, and watching it potentially break one way or the other. At least that pressure based on inflation we still have. Remember, it's four parts. It's not only the inflation, but it's also labor market, it's easy monetary policy, and strong GDP. Those are the four major influences that I think that we're going to have for the Russell 2000 stocks. And right now, the inflation part is messing with us. Labor market's okay. GDP's okay. Monetary policy is still in question because of the inflation side of things. Let's move over to Nvidia. For whatever reason, I've never said Nvidia, but yet there it is. I've heard other people call it Nvidia. I almost said it. So for Nvidia, for this one, up above the 20, we closed up above the 20, even though we opened down below it. And we really want to see us get on top of those moving averages. I talked about this indecisive candle from Tuesday. lots of indecision. The fact that we traded down below it, not necessarily all that great. And then we're watching to see where we drop down further, or as we are down below that price in the pre-market. So when you have a big indecisive candle like that, you're looking for the next candle over to determine direction. We did get a green candle, but we did close lower. So this could be something that tells us that maybe we trade lower leading up to those Nvidia earnings. Now, mind you, that's just technicals from this chart. Overall market bias is also going to play a role in that. So we want to be watchful for that as well. Other companies talking about demand for the Nvidia parts and services is also going to help us out a little bit. So I think that there's going to be some worrisome hesitation. I think we're going to stick between the 50-day up here at 135 and the 200-day down here at about 124. I think we're going to be between those two moving averages leading up to those earnings. I think there's going to be a lot of questions. I think there's going to be a lot of indecision. And unless we get a major catalyst to push us up over or down below either one of those two moving averages, I think that we're going to be a little bit sideways between now and Wednesday the 26th when we get those earnings. When we move over to Bitcoin, marking time down below the 500, not a great sign from this candle right here. So did I say the 500? The 50-day, this pink line that's on here, even though we're up above the 200-day, overall bullish. And so far we're holding the 95,413, which is good. We want to see that continue to hold. That 50-day, the fact that we keep on failing to get over it, that we see this sort of barcoding, if you will, to the side, and we see the momentum drop down below 50. We're kind of in a tough spot right now for Bitcoin. We might see further downward pressure. We might be back down to this massive support line that's down here below 95,000. Watch for us to find support. If we do, we need to cross over those moving averages. Sitting on top of the 20 and the 50 is going to be a really good sign for us. Falling down below it, failing to break it, is going to be a bearish sign for us. Those of us who are long on Bitcoin or are looking for long in the crypto markets, this is something we really want to watch out for. And if you're looking for those cheaper prices to come in on Bitcoin, they might happen soon, especially if we lose these two supports down to 85 or even down to 78. Actually, the 200-day is almost at 80,000 right now. So those are all going to be important to us. 85 and then $78,000 to $80,000 per BTC. And then wrapping things up with XRP, we have the prices coming up, which is good. But if we fail to break this top at about 250 to 252, if we fail to get over that and sit on top of that, if we get rejected again, we could tumble back down again. Then it's a game of support, and we have some supports to fall on and some evidence of historic buying pressure that happens down below this dotted line here at 230, about 234. We have support lines from trends. We have buying pressure from history. So we're just going to have to watch and see what happens from there. It is looking like the bulls are really starting to put that upward pressure on that line. Hopefully to break soon. Just like Bitcoin, got to sit on top of the 50 and the 20 days to really see that further bullishness. And then we want to watch to see if we get that further upward march up to that 340. Got to sit on top 340 to see that 472 that I talked about really come to fruition. So just so far, we haven't seen it. So right now, there's a lot of questions that are going on with the indices, with inflation, with the risk environment. Again, really focus in on that. What risk environment are we in? So far, the market's been unable to clearly answer that question. It's not been full risk on, where we see crypto and securities really start to break to the upside on this one. The question's still out there. We haven't seen them fully break to the downside on this one. The question's still out there. And I think it's going to be those four factors that I talked about. It's going to be inflation, jobs, it's going to be GDP, and then it's also monetary policy. I think those are the four main pillars that we're seeing. That tug of war that we have between them is really keeping us sort of in this stable trading sideways sort of state. And that for people who are either long options, short options, whatever, I should say, if you have long calls or if you have long puts, that can be something that really eats up your time value. If you're looking for movement or volatility, at least in these areas, I mean, that can be kind of a tough thing, but we are watching for that break to happen. We are looking for signs that we break to the upside or downside. Watch for a higher high, watch for a lower low. That's really going to tell you a lot about the next direction for any one of those things that I've covered here and other securities and crypto that are out there as well. Guys, thanks for watching. Check out the link for the Patreon in the description to support this channel. Head on over to the Discord once you get there to see my buys and sells, my technicals that I have available. Talk to me and my community members. And if you want to learn to do technical analysis yourself and get access to the bread recipe trading strategy developed by StockMo, find the link for StockMo Academy down in the description. Click on that, sign up using the code word DOCTOR for massive discounts. Guys, thanks for watching. I am Dr. Stock, Doctor of Education. Remember, my friends, that learning is earning. We'll see you next video.